A third option can be a network or host-based virtual firewall. You could, for example, have a Xen server on your network that has one of its virtual machines acting as a firewall. Or, as you can see here, you might, using your laptop, have VirtualBox with a pfSense VM to protect guest virtual machines. A virtual firewall simply means you don't need a dedicated hardware firewall and can be a useful solution in some circumstances, like when nesting VPN services or trying to prevent VPN leaks from a VM or filtering traffic on a VM. Let me just show you quickly here. So I've got a pfSense firewall here. If we look at the network settings, so adapter 1 is on the internal network running NAT, and then adapter 2 is an internal pfSense network. If I wanted my machines to use this pfSense network and firewall, I could, for example, let me go down here, change this to internal network pfSense, and then that virtual machine would be going through that virtual firewall, that virtual pfSense. And we'll talk more about this in other sections and why you might want to use that for privacy and anonymity, but that's just the general principle of virtual firewalls. So what are the sort of general firewall rules that you would want to have on a firewall, whether it be a host-based or a network-based firewall? The main rule is this: all network traffic should be denied unless implicitly allowed. That's your first and main rule. And if you're looking for some specific things to block, then you would want to block IPv6 if you are not using it. If you're not sure whether you're using IPv6, then you're simply not using it. You want to block UPnP on port 1900. I mentioned that already. You want to block IGMP, and you want to block any Windows, Mac, or Linux service that are not being used by you. So those are my general rules, but of course you're going to need to be specific for your own situation. And to determine what firewall rules you might need specifically, you want to use the firewall product that you end up choosing to monitor the traffic until you have a set of rules that match your usage. Some firewalls will do this automatically. This is just the introduction to firewalls. We're going to talk more specifically about whether you would want a firewall, a network firewall, or a host-based firewall, because you only implement a firewall or any security control based on a threat that you are trying to mitigate. So we'll discuss more on that in this section as we go through. A firewall may not be necessary in your situation, or it may be. A couple of terms you should know: dynamic packet filtering and stateful packet inspection. If a firewall uses dynamic packet filtering, also called stateful packet inspection, which all modern firewalls do, you only need to allow the outbound connection. You don't need an inbound rule for traffic to return to you. For example, you don't need a rule to allow web traffic to come back. You only need a rule to allow it out of the network. So how does this work? When a connection is made, a source port is sent, and the port will be higher than 1023. And in this example, you can see port 1525 being used, which is here. The firewall remembers this port and automatically allows, through dynamic access control lists, the inbound connection while the session is running, because it is using that port 1525 in this example. When the connection is closed with a FIN or RST packet, the firewall removes the dynamic access control list. And for UDP, which is connectionless, the access control list just times out. So that's an introduction to network and host-based firewalls and virtual firewalls.